Hi, everybody. So today I was just going to talk about practice, like how I see a lot of people practicing. Every time I see people see one of my exercises and they go off to practice it, there's there's this concept of grinding, of going through there, and then let's say if it's circle drawing practice, then what they do is they start drawing one circle after the other, after the other, after the other, and well, actually, maybe they don't wind up with nice circles like this. In fact, what often happens is they'll draw like one circle and then they'll stop. And then if they're using like in person, if they're using the boogie board that I lend them, they erase it and then they immediately start another and then they stop. And these are like these are just normal, like my mom and one of my nieces will basically do that. And it's kind of hard, right? It's like to tell them. I can tell you people on the internet because I don't have, like a kind of a personal investment. Um, it's like I don't have to worry about whether or not you succeed or fail. So I can tell it to you straight. Um, but when you're practicing, it's learning does not go like this. Okay? People think that if as they practice this way, they get better and better and better and better and better on the smooth gradient. It doesn't work that way. What usually will happen is if you're like my mom or my niece practicing their circles, they will forever be like that. And they will continue drawing circles the wrong way, the wrong way, the wrong way, the wrong way until they get sick of it and maybe they even stop entirely. That's because they're doing it the wrong way and because they're just going through the motions where they're just doing that and then erasing it. So I guess I need to build a bit of man, I don't want my niece to hate me and I don't want my mom to hate me, right? Like that's the problem. It's so much easier to it's so much easier to talk to people on the internet because you don't have that personal investment with them. But I can tell you straight that you've when you practice, the first time when you're practicing something, you've got to know whether or not you're doing it the right way. Otherwise, you're not going to be improving. And that means that if I were to show you how to draw a circle, there's a bunch of things. First of all, look at my fingers. See how much my fingers are moving. My fingers aren't moving at all. It's this whole hand, right? It's like whenever you see people miming that they're inside some kind of a building, right? Like they kind of stick their hands up and they lock into position, right? And then they move around and the hand is not, right? The hand's staying in the same point in space, right? It's the same thing when you're drawing, right? You're doing the whole Karate Kid wax on, wax off. Sorry, it might be a bit of a boomer reference. But when you're drawing circles, it's the same thing with your hand, right? Is that it's your fingers and your wrists don't do all this wiggly, wiggly, wiggly crap because that throws off your circle. And it's much more about a shoulder movement. And people are going to be like, well, what if I need to draw small circles? Well, look at how much my fingers are moving when I draw small circles. They're still not moving, right? So any kind of small movements I can do in these little tiles, and you'll notice my fingers still aren't moving. It's all in the shoulder. So there's this crucial piece of information. And so I found that when I was practicing drawing circles, I have a much more, well, some people call it intense. I would call it it's an awake mindset. So the awake mindset is not one in which you just keep
Nintendo voice chat to, in my
whoa.
opinion,
Hold on. I have to. There we are. I accidentally. Here's the funny thing. Is you see, I took my my Boogie board and I threw it over top of my Cintiq display, and I accidentally clicked like my YouTube video. Yeah, I had a quartering video up. So it's kind of funny in that I was actually manipulating the Cintiq behind it. So anyway, yeah, that was really weird. So the thing is that I have, an analytical mindset in that when I do, if I draw a circle, I think, well, how did that circle go? How could I have changed it? What went wrong? Like when I screw up a circle, when I was learning to draw, I'm like, why is it so crappy? So that means that when I practice or when I try to do something new for the first time, so this is a key thing, is that you got to think of it in terms of you're entering an unfamiliar activity. And so, at first your level's going to be crap. And you're going to, in my case, I would figure out, why is it crappy? What can I do to improve it? And so I try again, and it's still failure, but it's a different kind of failure, right? When we look at the objective quality of the circle, it's still just as crappy as the previous one, but maybe it's crappy in a different way. So the key thing is that you're trying to find all these different ways of failure. You're trying to find the right combination of things to make it work. It's like trying to fix a car. If there could be various things that are wrong in the car, preventing the car from starting, and it's not until you can, not until the fuel line's fixed, not until all the starter motor, the battery's charged, the starter motor's okay, and all the plugs are working, and until you get all those components working. Once everything's working, right? Like, I mean, you might get to a point where you hear the starter motor kick in and things goes right. It's like, oh, hey, starter motor's actually doing something, right? You get these jumps, and so that means that you don't improve in this kind of a line, in a linear fashion. You hit these plateaus, and the plateaus should be characterized by you trying to solve the problem. You're trying to solve a problem. Why are my circles so crappy? Why is it my exercises aren't getting better? Why am I not getting better? What am I doing wrong? You are troubleshooting yourself. You're the broken car. And so you've got to try all these different things. And then maybe you find out what it is that is holding you back. You find out what it is that you're doing wrong. And you find all the different things and maybe you manage to make all those things work. And all, the stars align and all those things happen to work. And you maybe get a blip. All right. So you get a blip, and of course you're back to the crappy state. So you have to keep exploring the blip. That's how it goes. You explore the blip. And the idea is that eventually what happens is you try to maintain that higher state of you're exploring the dip and the blip, and you're trying to extend how long you can maintain that state, because this is a conscious activity. You're thinking about what it is that you're doing that's better, and it's unfamiliar to you. So the problem is that you fall back into your old habits, your old habitual, your old behaviors drag you back down. Your knowledge of what you do differently and correctly is what you keep up. And practice is about trying to maintain that high level, that trying to maintain the correct but unfamiliar ways. And practice is about also trying to ingrain that and turn that new behavior into the behavior you're familiar with. And then you can, then you've actually climbed up a measurable amount. That's what practice is like. Practice is not this thing where you just grind at it. It's about knowing the right way to do a thing. You have to you have to pull yourself up to that level and then maintain it as long as you can until it becomes second nature to you. Then the practice is about being able to stay at that level. It means that now your baseline level of skill is now locked in. You're trying to lock in at a certain baseline level of skill. So that's where you start practicing and you turn it into routine. Then it becomes so the concept of routine is where you are locking in. And then once you have locked in at that level, then the next time you learn a thing, right, you start over again. Your baseline level is now this much higher off of the ground floor of suck, of zero. So again, you learn something new and you're dragging and you're trying to figure out there's this new thing you're trying to learn, but it's not working out and you're kind of, you're faltering. And then maybe, again, you keep trying, but not just keep trying, you figure out, what am I doing wrong? And if I'm doing this thing wrong, then you have to invent. That's what I would do, is I would invent a new way of doing it that specifically avoids that problem. Like whenever I had these problems with the finger, I'm like, well, okay, how do I stop that? I need to grip the pen in a certain way that gives me better control over the tip of the thing. And I need to lock all my joints down, and work with my shoulder. You have to invent a new way to do a thing. And it's unfamiliar. And you try it out, and maybe you get a small improvement. But it will feel strange because it's unfamiliar to you. So the thing is, you won't maintain it long. You come crashing right back down. So that's how it is that you're trying to kind of, because you have to think about it. It's not conscious. You can't maintain it. It's not routine yet, right? So that's what happens is you try to maintain your airtime until you're maintaining your airtime for longer and longer periods of time until, again, that becomes your new baseline. And then right back here, now you're ready to move up again. So each time you move up in these little, not just jumps, you move up in a little blip temporarily. Every time you learn a new thing, a new skill, it's only a blip. The practice is to turn that blip into a much longer, you're trying to improve the airtime on that thing. You're trying to ingrain that and turn it into a routine, so then you can move your baseline of ability up. And this I think doesn't just apply to drawing; it applies to practically any kind of performance skill. And to me, performance skill can be drawing, it can be the act. So it can be being able to draw nice circles. It can be drawing straight lines and accurate straight lines at that. It can be drawing three-dimensional wireframe objects in 2 axes. The reason why I'm able to do these things so easily is because when I practice them with the intent to move my baseline skill level up, right? Like when you moved your baseline skill level up through routine, it means that you can't get worse than that, right? Like that's your new crappiest level, right? You want to make it so that your new crappiest level of ability, which is higher up, is you want to raise that so that way you don't have to think about it, right? You can't be worse without actually trying. That's what it means to be really good at a thing, is that you are routinely good at a thing, and then because of that, you can that becomes a foundation that you can work off of. So you're constantly raising that baseline. You're trying to raise your crappiest level of ability, and it applies to drawing. It applies to beatboxing. Probably applies to firing weapons, and almost any kind of maybe singing. Yeah. I think pretty much playing any musical instruments. That's what practice is for. Is that number one, you need to troubleshoot your methods, and then you need to practice the new way of doing things, to experiment with it. You need to maintain a constant state of awareness of figuring out, is this result better or worse? And you have to find the way that works, and then you have to invest yourself into that new method, and try to maintain that new method and to turn that into the routine. And that's how you get good, scrub.